Hi everyone, it's Niamh here and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today we're going to be doing a really simple page, which is basically just using collage tissues, but it's about representing yourself in your journal. So with this page, I really surprised myself with how simple this was. And the only supplies I really used in this were collage tissues. So these are the Dina Wakley alphabet collage tissues, and I think the Church Doodles ones she got. And I had this big sheet of blah, 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 which I loved. And the day I was doing this was just a day that my brain was just in overdrive. There was just so much going on. I was overthinking. I was talking to myself. It was one of those days. And there was a lot of blah, blah, blah going on. And I was trying to keep myself a bit centered and go, no, you know what you need to be doing. But there was just all this sort of, both inward and other people sort of talking to me and telling me what I needed to do and telling myself what I needed to do, and my brain had just been fried at the end of the day. And as you can see, this page just really, really visually represented that to me, and it often surprises me how accurately some days, without necessarily wanting to, you can visually represent what's going on in your brain. I'm not the greatest drawer in the world, but by having these images, if I could draw, this is probably what I would have drawn anyway, because it sort of really described how I was feeling that day with, everyone, just all that blah, blah, blah going on in the background. So I used Stabilo oil pencil on my image and just water activated it a little bit to add a little bit of shadow, a little bit of grey to it. I did try using some colour pencils on my page, but I hadn't let the collage tissue dry too much, so it started to lift a little bit. So I decided to go for my Stabilo Woodies and my Stabilo oil pencil in red, just to add a little bit of colour. I was originally going to leave this purely black and white, but I decided it just needed that little bit of colour on the page just to lift it somewhat. And I had the two faces there. The only reason was I couldn't work out how to cut them apart without having a little bit of shadow, but I actually really like the large and the small. It's like, you've got yourself and your inner self represented, and then all the voices outside as well. So once I did this, I wanted to put a quote on the page, but my big thing about it was, because it was so black and white, I really wasn't sure how I was going to go about that successfully. So I decided for a change I would actually stamp out the quote, which I haven't done in a long time. Alphabet's stamps are amazing. These are the Tim Holtz ones. I'm not sure if they're still available, but they were awesome value for money. They're actually foam stamps, all really closely die cut, so they're really easy to use. And you just stick them onto your block and stamp them in. So I'm just stamping them into my book, and you'll notice it's not great stamping because I'm working in my Dina Wakley 6x6 journal, which is the heavy cotton rag paper, which is a little bit bumpy. It's not great for stamping on. But, I was getting the image up there, and once I sort of got it all stamped out, I decided I could draw over the top of it, which is what I ended up doing anyway. But the quote itself, I suppose, was more important to me. What I really loved, all that sort of blah, blah, blah in the background, I was a bit sad to cover it over with a quote. I thought the quote was quite important to explain what was going on. And this is one of these pages that you don't actually need to do much journaling on it, because it kind of tells a story fairly plainly with the images and the words that you've got. So just to darken up my page, I decided to go in with my Posca paint pens, which made it really, really easy because I already had this stamped image there. So if you don't like hand lettering, just stamp it out. You can always colour over the top, or you can add extra details over the top. So if you want to make sort of marquee letters, you can put the little dots in. If you want to edge it with a different colour or different shadow, you can add that in. So it gives you that model or a skeleton of the alphabet letter that you can use to adapt the letters to whatever you want. Also, if you have paint pens but you don't have the inks, you can sort of stamp it out and then just colour over with the different paint pens. The great thing about the foam stamps as well is you can also use paint to stamp with, which is a good way to get a really opaque stamped image the first time. It is using paint on my stamps is the one time I will actually clean my stamps straight away though. So just be aware that if you're using acrylic paint, obviously when it dries permanent, it dries into foam, it dries on your acrylic or on your rubber blocks. It means you're not going to get a great printing the next time if you haven't cleaned off the paint. So really, really important that if you are doing that, you clean it off straight away. So I decided after I'd done this, I usually put a drop shadow on my letters. I decided I would go in with white to sort of outline it. Now, while I really like this, it did kind of push the letters into the background, which sort of worked for this page because I wanted it to sort of blend in with that blah 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 in the background, because that was kind of the message that I wanted. But obviously you don't need to do that. You can see by putting the white lines around it, it's sort of really pushing those letters into the background compared to the really sort of bold black on the page. So, you know, use my page as an example and then do what suits you. I've either stuffed it up or not, so you can decide if you like it or not and do whatever you fancy on your pages. But it kind of represented, I think, what was going on. I did decide I wanted to put a little bit of writing on this page, so just down in that blank space in the face, I decided to put a little bit about writing about what I was feeling that day and why I needed to make this page. And I've done it in that asemic writing, which is sort of that illegible writing. I don't need to go back and read what I wrote on that day. The images itself tell me enough about how I was feeling that day. But, you know, it was good to dump out my brain at the end. So I would highly suggest, if you do have sort of collage tissues, or if you've got stamps and stamp them onto tissue paper, you could create something very similar yourself. You don't need that many supplies to make a page, and, you know, using fairly simple ideas and fairly simple monochromatic colour schemes, you can tell your story. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, bye for now.